The second stop on our journey through free agent targets takes us to the offensive side of the ball, and more specifically, wide receiver. By now, we know that the Eagles have a pressing need for speed heading into the offseason, but with such a deep draft class on the horizon, and a positional salary cap situation that needs to be managed diligently to say the least, just how high up the free agency ladder will the Eagles be looking to climb? I've spent the last couple of days grinding the tape on this year's free agent wide receivers to bring you the 5 players I think the Eagles should absolutely be interested in or be lining up to target. If you haven't seen our last video outlining the problem and how the Eagles wide receiver structure is set up, I would highly recommend doing that because this is very much a follow-on from that video. Before we get started though, guys, congratulations, you are the 21st overall selection in this year's NFL draft. You have become our start new wide receiver, and we're going to be slinging you up Eagles content all day long, and all we need you to do is catch that deep bomb and take it into the end zone for a subscribe touchdown. If you can subscribe to this channel, be a part of our community, that will be absolutely amazing. But hey, if we're slinging you content, we need you to come down with these catches. Alright, we need you to be Deshaun Jackson and not Mac Hollins. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and drop your comments below on the 5 players you would want the Eagles to sign. We're going to kick this list off with a personal favourite of mine, Phillip Dorsett. Now, this name brings up a lot of discussion whenever he's mentioned. A lot of people are very low on Dorsett and see someone that has never really lived up to expectations, while others see a very different type of player. And honestly, I think I can see a blend of both sides, but it does benefit the Eagles. It's easy to look at Dorsett's career trajectory and be disappointed. After he was shot out of a cannon to New England in the trade that originally sent Jacoby Brissett to Indy, he struggled to carve out a role. His targets dropped from 60 to just 18 in that first season, but he has been on an incline ever since. It's just not the incline New England envisioned. However, he is still only 27 years old and is coming off his best season since his last as a Colt. Dorsett may be inconsistent, but consistently flashes a quick release, impressive catch radius, and really elite speed. He'd likely be a cheap replacement for Nelson Agholor in the slot, and the Eagles should have interest here, but whether they'll pull the trigger on someone that has had issues with drops and can struggle to create separation through the stem is a different question altogether. If the Eagles want a player that can bring nothing but speed, and more speed to the table, then Dorsett is a budget option who is also viable on sweeps and reverses, which is something, as we know, they had Agholor doing a lot of over the last couple of years. Our second player on this list is someone we all know the Eagles have a crush on, and that's Robbie Anderson, and it's not hard to see why they do either. The Temple product has developed into one of the best deep threats in the NFL, having just put together a season where he caught 52 passes for 779 yards and 5 touchdowns. It's hard not to fall in love with a player that has such a violent release. He surges off the line of scrimmage and can create separation with crisp cuts. But it's what he does after tracking the ball that's most impressive. His yards after the catch ability is second to none, and when the afterburners go on, look out. The downside is he's likely going to want a big time payday, and whether or not the Eagles pay him kind of depends on how they'll aim to use him. It does make little sense to bring in a speedster WR2 when you have one in Deshaun Jackson already sat there. Sure, D-Jax may have durability concerns, but you don't pay $10 million plus for a rotational insurance policy. If Anderson signs, then it's with the intent of moving outside after a year in the slot, buddying him up with Deshaun Jackson for a year, or just cutting to the chase and maybe moving on from Jackson a little prematurely, something I know Eagles fans may not be too keen on. There are some nice slot names and speedsters in this upcoming NFL draft, and it does make the acquisition of Robbie Anderson a little bit hard to partner up with a vision unless it is set in stone from the moment free agency starts. So I would be all about the move. I think it is a perfect fit, but they've got to work out a way to implement him. The last thing we want is another Golden State situation here. Next up is Breshad Perriman, a former first-round pick who exploded back into life during the second half of 2019, showcasing what was once scintillating speed for someone who stands at 6'2", 215 pounds. In 2019, he caught 36 passes for 645 yards and 6 touchdowns, setting the stage for a second chapter in his NFL career and a reason to go back and look at the film. After battling drops in college and a myriad of setbacks with Baltimore and Cleveland, he's had 0 drops on catchable passes over the last 2 years, which is really good. Perriman has become a strong pair of hands, especially in contested situations. He high points the ball really well and adjusts to its flight path accordingly, unlike Agholor, and is physical during the route stem, brushing through contact and maintaining his stride. there's definitely a wide receiver 1 ceiling here, and at least a reason to be optimistic that there's still gas in the tank. Perriman could be a nice piece for the Eagles, and he wouldn't cost them an arm and a leg either. If they do move on from Alshon Jeffrey, I think he's got the frame and the relevant skill set to come in and maybe tide over until such a time as JJ Arcega-Whiteside is ready to take that next step, or whoever they potentially draft. He's going to be cheap, cheerful, and with a new wide receiver coach in place, I think this could be a good environment for Perriman to come into. Penultimately, we're going to take a look at Tajae Sharpe, the forgotten man in Tennessee's offense. Sharpe caught 25 passes for 329 yards and 4 touchdowns in a unit guided by Derrick Henry and AJ Brown. The former 6th round pick could really benefit from a change of scenery, and I think would be a nice fit with the Eagles. He did suffer a foot injury that stripped him of his 2017 season, but the fact he rebounded to turn 22 of 26 catches into first downs the next year says a lot, and keep that element in mind. For a 6'2", 194 pound wideout, Sharpe is a really strong route runner who sinks his hips into breaks and can sell a vertical look until snapping his head the other way. His size also makes him dominant inside the 20, which is an area where Ryan Tannehill placed a lot of faith in him down the stretch. In fact, he led the league in first downs, moving the chains on 57.1% of his 35 targets and leading the league in receivers with over 30 to their name. Sharpe may have one of the more extensive route trees in football, making him a versatile asset for any team, but what really makes him a fit with Philadelphia are the adjustments he makes. Sharpe is in tune with his quarterback and thrives during scramble drills or broken plays. He's able to leverage open space and make a window for his quarterback, which, given how this Eagles offense is shaping up, where it's making Wentz the epicenter and giving him freedom to get out of the pocket and make magic happen, that's a really important trait that not every receiver has. Because Sharpe hasn't really produced much in Tennessee, he could be available for a cheap deal, and it gives the Eagles a versatile piece that can be plugged and played at a multitude of spots. We know they're likely going to overhaul the starting trio, and while I wouldn't put all my money on Sharpe breaking out as a leading slot receiver or overtaking Deshaun Jackson on the outside or anything like that, in red zone situations and certain personnel, I think the Eagles can have a really nice gadget player here if they play their cards right. And finally, DeMarcus Robinson. Now, I'm not a massive fan of this, but the Eagles reportedly have him in their sights, and it is worth noting that they did show interest in the now 25-year-old prior to the NFL draft. Robinson has been a fun receiver to watch at times, largely thanks to helping me out in DraftKings, but he isn't magically going to fix the Eagles' receiving issues. He averaged 14 yards per reception this year, but he's very much been the Chris Hogan of Kansas City. He has 949 yards and 8 touchdowns to his name after 4 years in the league, but it is worth noting that he caught 16 passes for 281 yards and 4 scores when Tyreek Hill missed 4 games this year due to injury, so he's proven that he can go out there and shine when the Chiefs need him to. There were drop concerns at one point, and Robinson isn't a speedster by name or a saucy route runner by nature, but he's solid. He uses his body well, and like Greg Ward Jr., is always turning upfield for extra yards when making catches on curls and comebacks. His ball tracking ability is actually a big strength, which is what gave Mahomes so much faith on deep passes. Separation may not always be there, but as long as the ball is on the money, and with Mahomes it usually is, then the receiver's gonna have an advantage thanks to a great sense of awareness, stability, and strength at the catch point. In a deal that should near around $5 million per year in a hypothetical situation, the Eagles could do a lot worse here. He's only 25, he's got nice upside, and has stepped up in big spots when the Chiefs needed him to. Now, there were a couple of names I left off this list. One of them was Amari Cooper, who I know is a stunning receiver, had a career year in Dallas, but there were some inconsistencies, there was a dry spell, some injuries, and more importantly, one hell of a payday he's going to be looking for. And with the current situation, knowing that Alshon, regardless of what happens, is going to count for around $16 million, Deshaun Jackson's being paid close to $9 million, you're not going to facilitate Amari Cooper without completely revamping that position. Which, if it happens, brilliant, but I can't see it happening realistically, especially with a draft class that deep. And then the second guy was Kendrick Bourne, who I absolutely love. I was purring over when watching the tape. former undrafted free agent, absolute monster through the stem of the routes, but he is going to be a restricted free agent and he's likely going to be tended by the San Francisco 49ers. But I want you guys to let me know who you would be dropping down in your 5 targets. Who do you want the Eagles to sign this offseason, and what content do you want to see from me and the team here at Philly Sports Network? From myself, Liam Jenkins, you can follow me on Twitter at LiamJenkinsPSN. I'll see you soon. Happy Valentine's Day and enjoy your weekend.